All right. Happy Thursday morning to you guys. And I apologize. I'm running a little late. And if you're watching on the video, yes, I'm bundled up through Ohio. And it's cold. It's cold. And just so you guys know, I know I talk about it on, if you've listened to the show, you know that we bought an old property just outside of Columbus, an old farm property that has been quite a project, cleaning up, etc. So we're always working on it, and where my office is, where I record the show, I know some people have said on some of the comments that dude's recording from a trailer. I promise you, this is not a trailer. It's a small house on our property, and it's not done. Like you can see in the background here, the trim is still not painted, things like that. Well, we also had a fireplace in this house, and it when it would rain, it started leaking around the old fireplace, the old chimney, and it created some damage. So anyway, we had to take all that down. We had to remove the chimney all the way down, the little fireplace area, all the way down to the ground, redo the drywall, all that. Well, it kind of opened up the house a little bit. We had to re-insulate, etc. And so then we had this cold snap come through here these last couple days, and it's cold in here. So I am bundled up, and talk about technical difficulties. I'm still trying to get the studio, which I call my studio, my office, uh, done and completely finished, so I don't have to worry about it being freezing cold in here when I come out and record an episode. But anyway, yeah. So if you're watching on video and I'm bundled up, I've got like my insulated shirt on. I've got my beanie on, and which we call toboggans here in Ohio, winter hat. But because it's cold, and I don't know if you guys noticed on like maybe of the couple of the previous episodes, it's been cold here for the last couple of days in Ohio, but we had an Arctic blast come through last night. But you could see like my nose was red because it was so cold in here. But anyway, I'm working on it. So today's probably going to be a quick show, and I won't keep you too long. I want to get into this United Healthcare worker today. They're the CEO of United Healthcare that was essentially assassinated on the street or on the sidewalk in New York City, because it's one, it's a crazy story, but two, the reaction to the story that I've been seeing on social media is uh, even more crazy, and I want to get into that. But before I do, guys, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this episode to stay informed. It also helps get the show up in the algorithm, especially over there on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube and Rumble. So if you're watching over there on YouTube and Rumble, make sure that you do that too. It means the world to me. It gets to show up up in the algorithm, and it helps more people find the show. Also, make sure to leave your review. All right, let's just jump right into it, guys, because today's going to be a short show or short episode. I not only am I dealing with Arctic cold air right now in my office, um, but I've got a few projects I got to go check on today around Ohio. So I need to get in and talk about this and get out. But so let's jump right into it, guys. A couple new things have come out about this, and it's just baffling. So for those of you that don't know, the CEO, Brian Thompson of United Healthcare, was in New York City. He was there for a conference. He was going to be speaking at this conference, and early in the morning, he was going to the conference portion of the hotel to help set up, etc. And this dude, dark clothes, dark jacket, hood on, mask over his face, comes out of nowhere with a weapon. Apparently, the weapon even had a silencer on it, like looked like a hitman. Stepped out across the street onto the sidewalk behind him, fired multiple shots, even jammed his gun at one point in time, cleared the jam, fired a couple more times, and then left, jumped on an e-bike and took off. And the last time they seen him was him entering Central Park there in New York City, which for those of you that have been in New York City, you know, Central Park's a really big area. It's not like this little park in New York City. It's huge, right? So you can disappear in there relatively quick. And the assailant did. So they have not found him yet. There's still a manhunt going on. There is a $10,000 reward for anybody that knows who this guy might be or where he might be. And it's a crazy story. And there's some new things that came out just today. So I want to actually kind of show you guys this main one that I saw this morning that I was like, oh my god, you got to be kidding me. So apparently they're saying now that the killer's bullets, the casings that they found, um, said deny, defend, and the casings. So apparently bullets deny, defend, and depose. Now, that I don't know, that to me that sounds like this was, obviously it was premeditated, but it sounds like this is more of an emotional thing, like, because there was only a couple options here, right? Like either this guy was, doing things that he should be doing with people he shouldn't hit, like it was a hit. This is somebody who's upset and emotional, and vendetta killing, right? And when you are the CEO of a major healthcare insurance provider, and be you claims or didn't allow somebody to get the life-saving treatments they needed, or something, like the company, not necessarily the CEO directly, right? Um, Maybe you upset the wrong person, right? And they, you know, saying that because I'm saying I condone what happened. I'm going to talk about the response to this here in just a second. But this is a new report that came out this morning, that that these shell casings said deny, defend, and depose. Now, apparently there was a book written and about, uh, well, let me see. I'm trying to find it here. Yeah, there was a book written in 2010 called Deny and Defend: Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It. So in the book, this author, Jay Feynman, who has denied request interviews, he said he basically covers, he's a legal expert in insurance law, torts, and contract law, but he explains what happens when insurance companies do not, those affected can legally do. And so it's kind of close to, I don't know, two things together, but it kind of is starting to lead people down the road of thinking this was, vengeful. This was somebody who was scarred, who was clearly upset by United Healthcare policies, potentially. Like, and again, I don't want to get too far out in front of this. That's why I didn't talk about it yesterday. I knew about it yesterday when I came on the show. Um, but I didn't want to talk about it right away because I didn't know a ton about it. It was breaking news yesterday morning. And before I talked about it, I wanted to kind of see how this was going to play out. Also to note, the shooter reportedly bought coffee at a nearby Starbucks before the killing, and the police have retrieved his coffee cup and bottle from the trash can nearby, and they are testing that evidence to see if they can get any DNA, fingerprints. Apparently, phone in an alley near the Hilton where this took place in New York City, and that it is believed to have belonged to the killer. So they found this cell phone. They believe it belonged to the killer, and they are going through it to see if they can utilize this evidence uh, to find him. So I just thought it was crazy that they found the bullet casings, or that they, on the bullet casings that they found, I should say, said deny, defend, depose. So that's referencing, not sure, not sure it is. This guy was upset clearly by with health, and he took it out on the CEO. So it's just a crazy story. I think it's just, the way it happened. I think the fact that it was caught on video camera is, I think that's why it's such headline news. And obviously this guy was, a big deal, if you will. I mean, a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. And there's things that are starting to come out about Brian Thompson as well. For example, he was facing DOJ investigations when murdered. So apparently he was under investigation, or facing DOJ investigations, because he exercised stock options and sold shares worth $15.1 million in February, approximately 2 weeks before news of the federal antitrust investigation that the DOJ is doing, before that became public. So, he knew, basically, like, if you guys don't know how this works, like, he knew He had been contacted, right? United Healthcare had been contacted by people in the Department of Justice, because that's typically what happens when they start an investigation, is they reach out. Uh, but they usually don't take things public until they feel they have enough evidence there to run with it. So they knew, and he knew, and he went out and sold $15 million of stock options uh, prior to that investigation going public last February. Other folks in his company did as well. Apparently, according to reports, along with Thompson, the United Healthcare Group chair Stephen Hemsley, Chief People Officer Aaron McSweeney, and Chief Accounting Officer Tom Roos had sold a total of $101 million in shares just prior to the DOJ announcing this antitrust investigation. And they're investigating him um, now they're investigating for insider trading, or were at the time he was murdered in Manhattan. But they were looking into whether or not the DOJ originally was looking into whether or not they had violated antitrust laws with some of the acquisitions that they had done in the previous year. So then he went and sold these stock options, and they were like, "Hey, bro, like, you obviously knew." So then he became under investigation for insider trading before he was murdered. So just kind of a crazy story. I think, his wife came out and said that there had been death threats. She wouldn't go into any detail, said she couldn't go into any detail about the threats that were coming in, but that he had received threats prior to the shooting. And I think there's more that's going to come out. I mean, the guy was under investigation for insider trading. He potentially committed insider trading, which I think it's crazy, because if congressional members can get away with it, I don't know why CEOs can't. Like, it's rules for thee, not for me. But that's a topic for another show. And that is a topic I write about in my book, We the Puppets. If you haven't picked up a copy, do so. It would be awesome if you picked up a copy. But yeah, I just think that I think a lot more is going to come out about Brian Thompson. His wife said he got death threats. He was under investigation for possible insider trading. And, who knows? I don't know if he was a good dude, upstanding, member of his community, etc. I don't know. And that's kind of why yesterday, it was big news. It was breaking news. Like, hey, the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company was literally gunned down on a sidewalk in New York City in front of all these people. And it looked like a professional hit job. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. But I want to know more about it before I go and talk about it on the show. I just don't like jumping out in front of things before we have information. This is political commentary. This is commentary. And I don't typically talk about news events like this. That's not what I've ever wanted to do on this show at all. So this isn't politics, right? But it's more of a news event. And I'm giving commentary on a news event that I otherwise wouldn't, except for the reaction that I've seen about this shooting of the CEO of United Health Group. I just think, I talked about it with my wife last night because I was shocked. Okay, so I'll just tell you some of the things, and I'm not going to pull it up on the screen if you're watching it live. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pull these responses and some of the memes that I've seen about this shooting up on the screen, out of respect for Brian Thompson and his family, because here's what I believe. Some of the response, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen it too, is just heinous. Whether you like large corporations, whether you think large corporations are virtuous, whether you think large corporations do the right thing or not, shouldn't allow you as humans, and shouldn't allow you to dehumanize events. And I know some of you out there, and rightfully so, would say, well, but these companies constantly dehumanize their customers and the general public. And in a lot of ways, I would agree with you. However, a man was still murdered in broad daylight on a sidewalk in New York City. A man with a family and a wife. I'm not sure if he has kids. Maybe you guys can let me know. I haven't looked or dug that deep into it. But this was someone with a family, and some of the response memes I'm seeing are completely the person was killed. Um, and I hate that that's where we are today. And partially why one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up on the show and talking about it on a show that is really political commentary, because this is not politics, but it's a big story. And I think, just seeing the last presidential cycle, that I think politics is creating this scenario in America where we dehumanize each other. If you don't agree with me, you're horrible. You're deplorable. You're, a Nazi. You're a misogynist. You're all these things, right? You're a fascist. You're not human. And we've just gotten to this point where we don't treat each other with kindness, grace, respect, and love. And I'm not trying to be all woo-foo or anything like that on today's episode, I promise. It's sad that we've gotten this far, like, in that we can't, as people, as human beings, like, we haven't evolved far enough. It's almost like we're regressing in our evolution. Like, we have not evolved far enough to where we can hold complex thoughts in our brains at the same times. For example, I can still humanize Brian Thompson and feel sad that a life was taken on a sidewalk in New York City that didn't have to be taken. But also understand why he probably was killed, because of the bad conduct or policies of the company he led and the millions of lives they've probably negatively affected. I understand that. But I think it's sad that we can't do both, that we'll go out and be disgraceful and create memes and jokes about somebody being gunned down on a sidewalk. And, because you got to be on one side or the other. That's where we're at in America. It's like we're so polarized, and we sensationalize literally everything. And it feels like every time a news story breaks, it's sensationalized and then it's polarized and you have to pick sides. And it's like we haven't evolved our tribalism enough to not constantly. I mean, I even saw Charlemagne go on The View the other day, or yesterday, maybe. I was watching videos about it where he's basically saying the same thing about politics. He was like, it's crazy that, like, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, it's like you can't just objectively look at what's going on in your party and say, yeah, that's bad, or that's wrong, or you shouldn't do that. And it's absurd that you can't do that, because when you can't do that, it makes you look crazy. Like, it makes you look like you're a cultist, like you're a Kool-Aid drinker, and that only your side could ever be right. And we know that that's true. That's how deep the tribalism goes. It's almost like we're regressing into an inferior species that we should be thousands of years, ahead of our evolution. We're going backwards into these groups, these tribal groups, where we can't even hold a complex thought in our brain at the same time. Where we can't look at a situation where a man was gunned down and say, hey, that was wrong. You shouldn't have murdered him. It's sad that man was killed, regardless if that man did all the virtuous stuff in the world. We're seeing it right now on Capitol Hill with all these Trump nominations, like Pete Hegseth, for example, and everybody and their brother coming out of the woodwork and literally accusing him of being a rapist, and all these drunk, somebody that can't balance his checkbooks, bad with finances, right? And it's just ridiculous. I mean, this guy is still a husband. He's still got kids. Like, he's got a family. We've got to sensationalize and polarize all the time. And it's like, can we not step back? It's like, raise your hand for all of you out there watching or listening right now. Raise your hand if you've never done something wrong. Raise your hand if you've never told a lie a day in your life. Raise your hand if you haven't ever done anything you're ashamed of. Not one of you out there is raising your hand right now, because that we all have a past. We all have a history. We're all innately flawed in one way or another. Not one of us is perfect. But yet the expectation in our tribalism groupthink is that the other side, like, has to be perfect. And the only way to be perfect is to agree with me. Right? And it's absurd. And we have no grace for anybody that doesn't agree with us. And that's wrong. Like, we haven't evolved further than that. And I just think it's crazy. And I saw a lot of the memes and the responses to Brian Thompson's murder because that's what it was. We don't know the motive yet. We're starting to get an idea of what that motive might be of the CEO being gunned down, but we don't know yet. And, it was just jaw dropping, eye opening, the memes and the responses that people, and if that was one of, if it's one of you out there that, said something atrocious, or shared a meme about this man being murdered, I'm not like beating up on you. I got grace for you. I would just really think about what is it you're doing here? You think you've evolved enough that you will dehumanize an act of violence? That you can't hold the complex thought in your brain at the same time of feeling sorry that a human life was taken too soon and too early and didn't have to happen, and you understand why it probably happened, and you might even feel for the person who conducted the crime, depending on what his motive was. I just think we got to get back to civility. I think we got to stop dehumanizing each other. That's why I'm bringing it up on today's episode. It's not political, really, but we see this in the political world more than anywhere. And so when I saw it in a situation like this, where it's like we're dehumanizing a man that had been murdered, I just think it's wrong. And, we should never celebrate the loss of human life, ever. And we should never make jokes about it or memes about it because we're better than that. And it made me sad. And I just wanted to say, I think we were better. I think we can do better. I think, we can do complex thoughts. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? We can feel sadness and sorrow for the man that was, murdered and shouldn't have been. And simultaneously, we can maybe understand why this happened. Not saying I agree with it. Not saying that murder is the answer for anything. It never is. But let's wait and see what the motive was of this killer. I think they're going to catch him. I mean, the guy left behind a DNA trail. He's not a professional. He didn't completely cover his face. He would have had sunglasses on or something covering his eyes in order to escape facial recognition, because you need to cover the eyes in order to escape facial recognition. He didn't do that. How did he get on the e-bike? Did he swipe a credit card to get on the e-bike? Did he swipe a credit card to buy a Starbucks? And then he left the Starbucks behind, right? He left a water bottle that he drank from and a coffee cup that he drank from behind, and they've retrieved that, and possibly a cell phone. So, I've ridden e-bikes and I've ridden the little electric scooters, and typically you got to have an app, right? Or download an app that is, paid for by a credit card that's in your name. So I believe they're going to find this guy. He's not a professional. I don't think a professional would have jumped on an e-bike. But I think they're going to find this guy, and we're going to know his motive, right? His motive is going to come out. And I think, in our evolved world, we can listen to this man's motive and go, yeah, maybe United Healthcare needs to revamp some things. Maybe they need to take care of their customers a little bit better. And we can say that without condoning this act of violence. Just like we can say this guy was murdered too soon and have a little bit of sorrow and grace for him and his family, and not post crazy ass memes online about it that are despicable and disgusting. Because I just think we're better than that. We've evolved beyond that. And so, yeah, I apologize for bringing it up on the show. I don't really apologize, but it's not something I normally talk about here on the show. Not something I want to genuinely talk about here on the show, because this is more political commentary, not, every news event that's going on, but it's just so it resembles so much the political world that we live in today, where everything is so polarized and so divisive. We sensationalize every damn story that comes out of the media and then immediately polarize it. And you got to pick a side. And I'm just here to tell you, you don't have to pick a side. Like, just think independently. Think for yourself, America. Think for yourself. You don't have to pick a side. Not every story is a sensationalized story, and not everything is like the worst deal or the best deal or whatever. That's entertainment. That's how they get you to tune in and turn it on and watch and take part in the sensationalization of, people's lives. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to pick a side, and you don't have to regress into, basic tribalism on every news story that hits. Anyway, guys, programming note. I am going to be not doing any episodes from December 20th to the first of the year. Just so you guys know, I'm going to try to record some things in the background just to throw out some material. If you get bored during the Christmas break, you can go in and check it out. But I'm going to be doing some revamping to my office, to the studio. We're going to kind of be reformatting the show just a little bit going into the new year because we're getting very close to our 100th episode over on the podcast. And so I want to change things up a little bit. I'm also doing some work on the website so that we can keep track moving forward of all the people in Congress, all the congressional representatives, senators, and House of Representative members, what they're doing, how they're voting, the resolutions, the bills, everything that they're putting forward in a nice, easy to use and read dashboard so we can see whether or not they're actually trying to serve out the will of the people or if they're just trying to do their influence peddling and not listen and suit themselves instead of the people. And those are the people. And I want a dashboard. I want an easy, quick way for us to see this so that when elections come around, when the midterm cycle comes around, we can vote these people out. We can primary them and band together to vote them out because, we're done. And I think you agree. We're done. We're going to pay attention. We're not taking our hands off the wheel anymore here in America. And all these senators, all these congressional representatives, and to include the Trump administration and all the bureaucrats, guys, if you didn't learn anything from this election, you're in big trouble. Like you'll be voted out of office. If you still think that the American people are just going to go to sleep, it's like the general or the admiral from the Japanese Navy back prior to World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor. His I think it was one of his staff officers was like, "Hey, we should be celebrating. This is a great deal. Like our mission was successful. We attacked Pearl Harbor." And he goes, "No, I think we just awoke a sleeping giant." And I think that's what happened in this last election cycle. I think the political class, the political and shows like mine and shows like other people's like Dan Bongino and all those guys, the Dan Bongino army, we're watching. We're paying attention. And you're either going to do our will and do the will of the American people, or you're going to find a new job. It's just that simple. You're going to find a new job. So anyway, so I'm working on that in the background, getting this done on the webpage at justinstaten.com. And I hope to have all that done and ready and rolling out uh, by January 1st, the first of the year, so that we can hit the new year running. So anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. Oh, and if you haven't went out and picked up a copy yet of We the Puppets, my new book, you can do so over on Amazon. Just search We the Puppets, Justin Staten. It'll come up. Or you can go to my website, justinstaten.com, and you can get a signed copy there. It's great for the holidays. That's all I've got for you guys today. But I will be back tomorrow with another show, a little bit longer show. I'm working on getting the heat and everything turned back on here in the studio. I'm in Ohio, guys. We got an Arctic blast, and we were doing work on the office here. So it's I got to get everything done. But I will be back tomorrow with you guys. A little bit longer show. Hope to have a couple guests on tomorrow's show too. So you guys won't want to miss it. It'll be good. But I love you guys. Thanks for coming back for another episode of In the Middle. And I'll be back tomorrow. But until then, guys, stay strong, stay informed, but most importantly, stay in the fight. All right, guys, till tomorrow.